Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. Today we're going to be looking at Ezra Chapter 6, and if you haven't read this chapter, please pause this recording, read the chapter. It's a very short chapter. Read it, understand what's happening in the chapter, and then come back and listen to the summary and the lessons that I have picked from this chapter. For me, this is actually one of my favorite chapters in this whole book. It just shows me how much God is usually like so excited and so like waiting in anticipation that we would take the first steps of faith. The problem is that we never take those steps of faith, because yani when we take this, God is like, see my child, now let me bless my child, because this is exactly what happens in this chapter. All right, let me take you back. Chapter 5. What happened in chapter 5? We see Zerubbabel had continued building, and his team had continued building the temple of God, even if there was a decree on ground from King of Persia, King Artaxerxes, who had said that the construction should stop. But after the prophet Zechariah and Haggai came and encouraged them, they continued to rebuild the temple. And when they did, there was this Governor Tatanai. He came and asked them, Allah, what's up? Why are you guys rebuilding this thing? I thought there was a decree to say you shouldn't rebuild it. And in the process, what happened that he writes a letter to the king, to the now the present king of Persia, who is King Darius, and tells him that people rebuilding this temple, when I asked them, this is what they say. They say that King Cyrus had given them a decree to build this temple. So please search the archives and just find out whether what they are saying is true. And now in chapter 6, it says that the King Darius then issued an order, and they searched in the archives stored in the treasury of Babylon. And what was found? They found the scroll. They found the decree that King Cyrus had issued concerning the temple of God. And he had said, let this thing be built. All the costs should be paid by the royal treasury. All the gold and the silver articles that belonged to the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken, should be given back to the people of Jerusalem and should be put back in the temple in Jerusalem. And that's just the decree that was there. And so when King Darius saw that this decree was actually something that was decreed even before the other decree, it was actually the first decree that they should build the temple, and then there was this second decree by a different king that said they should stop building the temple. And now there's Darius. So how Darius responds to Tatanai, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and the people who had come and written these letters, is that he told them, do not interfere with the work of this temple of God. Let the governor of the Jews and the Jewish elders rebuild this house of God on its site. Moreover, I hereby decree. Hey, I like those words. Let me read. This is verse 8. It says, moreover, I hereby decree what you are to do to these leaders, for these leaders of Jews in the construction of the house of God. Their expenses are to be fully paid out from the royal treasury. Imagine. I'm just like, what? Yani sasa hata mtajenga tu from the just squeezes and knees of your pockets. This whole bill is going to be paid out of the royal treasury from the revenues of the Trans-Euphrates, so that the work will not stop. Whatever is needed, young bulls, rams, male lambs for burnt offering to the Lord, to the God of heaven, wheat and salt and wine and olive oil, as requested by the priests in Jerusalem, must be given to them daily without fail, so that they may offer sacrifices pleasing to God of heaven and pray for the well-being of the king and his son. Furthermore, I decree that if anyone defies this edict, a beam is to be pulled from their house, and they are to be impaled on it. As in, beam moja itolewe kwa nyumba yake, and then he's hung on it. And for this crime, their house is to be made a pile of rubble. May God, who caused his name to dwell there, overthrow the king or people who lift a hand to change this decree or destroy this temple in Jerusalem. I, Darius, have decreed it. Let it be carried out with diligence. How cool is that? Yani wao wanapeleka complaints, this thing is being built, and then remember, by the way, kujeni hapa. Sasa, this is what you're going to do. You're going to not just, don't disturb them as they build that thing, as they build that temple, but on top of that, you're going to give them every supply needed to build the temple and every supply needed for the sacrifices that they will make. And on top of that, nisisikie mtu amekuwa against. Let nobody go against this, because if they do, they will be impaled. They will be hung on a pole, and then their house is going to be made into rumbles. And then on top of that, let no king overthrow this decree. So it was like a permanent, irrevocable decree to continue building the temple of God. As in, how amazing is that? One of the things that I realize is that, okay, before I say my lessons, other things happen in this chapter. Of course, the temple is finished. No, they continue building the temple, and they finish it, and they dedicate the temple to the Lord, and they have the Passover, and they are just a happy bunch of people, because now the temple has been constructed. They didn't have to go into their pockets. The money has come from the government. The money has come from the treasury of the government. They are supplied with things that they need, even for sacrifices. As in, man, they are having an easy time building. And of course, they have the Passover event, the celebration of the Passover at the temple, and it's all merry. One of the things that I realized, or rather I learned from this chapter, is that this courage that Zerubbabel and the people that were building this temple had, this courage that they had to go against the decree of Artaxerxes, brought them not just one but many things. Of course, it brought the continuation of the construction. It brought with it a permanent, irrevocable permission to continue building the temple. It brought with it resources for the construction, resources for the burnt offering. It brought with it security and protection. As in, my goodness, can you see just how much God was just like waiting for them to take that step of faith? Because if they had been prophesied by Haggai and Zechariah, and they folded their hands and said, well, sisi hatutaenda kujenga kwa sababu King Artaxerxes alisema tusijenge. Ebu imagine just how, as in, now the temple would never have been built. It would never have been rebuilt. It would just be still just the foundation that is laid, and nothing would have happened after that. But just the fact that they took that first step and said, we are going back to start constructing, to continue construction, even if there's still that decree that was on ground, helped to avert that decree and give them a permanent, irrevocable decree over and above those resources for construction, resources for the burnt offering, security and protection, even as they were building the temple. And how great is that? Like, ata sijui, I don't know what to say. My question is there anything that God has asked you to do, or He has placed it in your heart, or something that you know you want to do? Even if it's, sometimes you think that when I say, is there anything that God has asked you to do, it has to do with go and preach to the missionaries. Sometimes it's just God has asked you to start a business, and He's just waiting for you to actually start doing that thing. Or God has asked you to do something. Sometimes when we think about things that God asks us to do, we think that they must be so church-based, church-based. But sometimes it's just something in your house that God is asking you to do, something in your family that God is asking you to do. Maybe God has asked you to start your get-togethers in your family, and you are just over there not doing it because you're afraid. Or God has asked you to start like a business that would provide for many people, and many families would come to benefit from it, but you're not taking that first step because you're so afraid. God is waiting for you to take that first step of faith, because when you do, He now comes na anakuja na full force. He comes with every gift that you would want. And I personally have experienced God's gifts, and have experienced that taking the first step, even when you're shaking, trembling, and in fear, you're just like, I will do this. Hata nini ifanyike, I will do this. Even if I am afraid, you do it afraid. You just go there afraid. You just do what you need to do afraid. Because then God comes. When you take faith, when you take the step of faith, God comes. And He comes, when He comes, He doesn't come with 2 shillings. He comes with a whole basket of gifts, as we have seen in this chapter. Thank you so much for listening, guys. And I pray that you would take the first steps of faith. Have a good day.